safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Safe Space. Today I have Heather Vandermeyden. Did I say your last name right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. I should have asked before. Today she's coming on to talk to us about her near-death experience that saved her life. She just released a book called Miracles from the Other Side, How My Near-Death Experience Saved My Life. And this story is packed with not only information I've heard from other NDEs, but just makes me feel closer to home when I hear stories like this. She is going to talk to us not only about how she experienced an NDE, what she was going through in the hospital, seeing her future children. We'll be going over heavenly music, healing waters, and how she feels after the 25th anniversary and what she's doing now to help others in the realm of NDEs, but also anyone suffering with chronic diseases and just needs a friend to talk to about the other side. So hello, Heather. Welcome into the show.
Hello. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm really excited to get into your story. And I say that every episode, and I mean it every episode, but near-death experiences, I have never experienced, but I'm such an advocate for people reading the stories to, I don't know, almost be closer to God in a sense, because we just get such a better picture of where we come from. And a story like yours is very captivating. You go through so much, not only in the physical realm, but also why your soul is experiencing the heavenly realm. So where would you like to start the story today?
Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. I had a pretty normal life. I grew up, with a couple brothers, a really close-knit family, and I was very healthy. And then around the age of 18, 19, I started getting sick. I was eventually diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which just came out of left field. It was a really scary diagnosis because there's no cure for it. And as the year grew, I became sicker and sicker. I had to quit my job. I was newly married. I got married when I was 18. My husband was 2 years older than me. So we were pretty young, really young actually. And all of a sudden we have this diagnosis that's really scary. And as I got sicker and sicker, I ended up in the hospital multiple times. And I one day was sitting at my parents' kitchen table and I heard this voice say, "You're going to die soon, but you're going to be okay." And I looked around and there was no one in the room but me. Kind of freaked me out. And I was a pretty, black-and-white person, where did this voice come from? What, am I losing my mind? But I felt like I needed to trust this voice. And so I started thinking in my mind, okay, I'm young. I have this disease, but in my mind, was in severe, severe denial that I was even sick. So I didn't see it as something that might kill me. And so I thought, okay, car accident. I like to drive fast. That's probably going to be what it is. So I kind of started preparing for if I did pass away, what would happen, not telling my family. And as the next 2 months wore on, I became incredibly critically sick. My lungs collapsed and I have a really high pain tolerance. So I spent about a week thinking I had back pain. I was passing out nonstop and I fell down the stairs and broke my tailbone. Just horrible things were happening. But again, severe denial. I'm seeing my doctors constantly and they're saying, you need surgery. You need to remove your large intestine. And I was like, no, thanks. So eventually in December, I did end up in the hospital. The entire month I'd had 104 and higher fevers and we couldn't get the fevers down. So I had an ER doctor that finally said, we need to keep her here to do some more tests and see why she's not responding to treatment. I was on some really heavy duty medications trying to knock the ulcerative colitis back into remission and nothing was happening. I was 94 pounds. I was changing my clothes constantly all day because my fevers were so high. I was just soaking through my clothes. And again, I was thinking, you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have a fever. So after I was put in the hospital, they did a bunch of imaging and blood work and they realized that my large intestine had completely perforated and needed to be removed immediately. So they came into the room, the doctor, and said, we need to remove your large intestine and give you a colostomy bag for a couple of weeks while it heals. And then we'll do what's called a J pouch. They take your small intestine and do a loop at the bottom, and that becomes your basically your large intestine. And my response was, no, thank you. I have a family Christmas party. I need to get to that. I have this great family I wanted to celebrate Christmas with. And I hadn't bought all the Christmas presents for my family and friends yet. It's December 23rd, the day of the surgery. And I'm like, no, I'm not that sick. So they ended up doing surgery. My family overruled my crazy desire to not have surgery. And they removed my large intestine. And surgery went great. It was a pretty heavy duty surgery. So I was going to be in the hospital over Christmas to recover. And on New Year's Eve, it was Y2K, so 1999. I'm in the hospital. I've got family around. We're waiting to see if the machine shut down. And the nurses come in, and we've got the TV in the background blaring. We're watching the ball drop in other countries. And the nurses come on each side of me to check my 8-inch incision and do my vitals. And I suddenly feel what I feel is like my body lifting off the bed. And I thought, why did they move the bed up to their shoulder height? This is really weird. And I was on no narcotics at this point. I hate the feeling of narcotics and anesthesia. And I refuse to use it ever if possible. So I was really lucid. But as they worked on me, I was still high up, near their shoulders. And then after they left the room, I didn't say anything. I felt my body slowly move down to the position it had been in before. And I was like, oh, okay, that was weird. So I didn't tell my family because I didn't understand what happened. And I didn't feel like I left my body again after that. On January 3rd, I had what's called a small bowel evisceration, and my small intestine came out into my colostomy bag. So I was rushed back into surgery. And then a week later, it happened again. And at this point, I was on a feeding tube. I was pretty sick. I was starting to, get fevers and infections. And I had what's called intra-abdominal sepsis, where my entire body was like filling with sepsis. And I had ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. I'd gotten sicker as the days went on. And so by the time they did this third emergency surgery, my body was very, very critical. I was struggling to breathe, and I was failing fast. So the nurses, they took me into the critical area part of the hospital, and they were trying to get me under control. And what I was feeling was, it felt like my heart and my lungs were like breaking out of my chest, and someone was squeezing so tight that I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was suffocating to death. And that's what ARDS is. Your lungs fill with fluid and you suffocate. And it's a really horrible thing to happen. So as I'm feeling like I'm suffocating, they're saying, we're going to intubate you. And I'm trying to make my breathing slow down. No, I'm okay. But they eventually had my parents leave the room to work on me. And the next thing my parents know, they see this hospital bed with the nurses flying down the hallway and the patient's critical. And it's me. And they think I'm dead because there were so many nurses around the bed. They're running so fast, screaming, move out of the way. And so the next thing I know, I am sitting in this stadium type seating, like cement stadium that you'd see at an outdoor event. And off to my right, there's a nurse's station. There's like probably 3 nurses there. They're working, they're on the computers. And I'm noticing every detail. I see that they have a clipboard and there's a pen tied to it with a string, and they're using that to write on the clipboard. And they're just working in tandem, but they don't notice me. And so I get bored with it, and I look to the left, and there's a hospital bed, and there's 8 nurses around the bed, and it's pure chaos. I can tell that whoever's on that bed is just really struggling to live, and the nurses are trying to help that patient. And so I watched for about 5 minutes, kind of like a movie, and I don't know what's going on. I don't know who these people are, but I can feel their thoughts, which I thought was really weird. And I can feel the nurses thinking, she's going to die. She's really young. And we've got to save her. This will devastate her family. Like, all these thoughts are just rapid fire coming to me. And then I start noticing the girl on the bed, and she's really struggling to survive. They're trying to stabilize her. And I think that poor girl, she looks like she's in a lot of pain, and she looks really scared, and I can feel like she's scared. And after about 5 minutes, I suddenly get this thought, that girl is you. And I would have never, ever thought she was me. I didn't have any emotional connection to her at all. And it was like a punch in the gut. And I thought, how can she be me? I'm home. I'm in my space where I'm in pure love, surrounded by the most intense love I've ever experienced. I don't have any pain. I'm just so happy and I feel so at peace. There's no worries, there's no anxiety, and that girl can't be me, but it was. And so I watched her for quite a few more minutes. And the next thing I know, I wake up and I'm back in my body and I'm in the shock trauma area of the hospital. It's pitch dark, it's nighttime, and my hands are tied to the bed. And I can feel something like a thick straw in my mouth that I'm kind of chewing on. And I don't know what it is. And it's really bothering me. So I go to pull it out, but I can't because my hands are tied down. And a nurse screams my name and says, "Heather, put your hands down. Stop. Don't do that." And it scared me. And I fell asleep, because I'm still coming out of the anesthesia. And I'd wake up and it would happen over and over again. And I guess what was happening is I was waking up and trying to pull out my intubation tube. Mm-hmm. And the nurse was trying to stop me from doing that. And that's why my hands were tied down. But I didn't understand why this was happening. I didn't have enough comprehension, and it was really scary. And this nurse was actually quite abusive throughout the hospital stay. It took a lot of therapy to get through that after the fact. But over the next 3 weeks, as I became incredibly, incredibly critical, I developed this beautiful gift to be able to leave my body when the pain became too intense. And it was amazing. There aren't words in the human language to explain how beautiful the place was that I went and how grateful I was to be able to leave my body. But at first I couldn't control it. I would just be there and suddenly I was out of my body. The first time that happened, I was in the shock trauma unit and it was dark. I was by myself and I suddenly was in this dark area and I was traveling so fast. I felt like the speed of light, and it was really scary because it was so fast. And I thought, this isn't a normal speed of travel and it's so dark. But there was this man that was kind of in front of me, really close to me, that was just watching me. He had these dark brown eyes, dark hair, a beard and a mustache. And he was dressed in this dark suit. And it looked like it was from the 1800s with a top hat on. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, it's Abe Lincoln. Wasn't really, but that's what he reminded me of. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened. I'm terrified. And why is, Abe Lincoln here with me? And as I get scared, as we were traveling at this fast rate, I would pop back into my body. And it was kind of like I would slam, like boom, and it's back in my body. And then it would happen again. And it happened for about 3 days. And, I'm intubated at this time. I can't tell my family what's happening. And I don't have the capability to even write with a pen. I'm so shaky. And I'm hooked up to every life support machine possible. And I couldn't say, this is really scary. So I just quit sleeping. I thought I must be having a nightmare. And after about the 3rd day, the nurses sedated me. They gave me a shot and sedated me. And at that point, that quit happening. And this is in, 2000, January of 2000. So for the last 25 years, people have said, who do you think that man is? And I'd say, I don't know. I have no idea who he is. Maybe he's a relative or a spirit guide. I don't know. But his face never left me, what he looked like. And if I was an artist, which I'm not, I could do a really mean stick figure, but I can see him in my mind. What he looks like. And about a month and a half ago, maybe even less than that, I had a cousin reach out to me and say, do you think it's this person who is my great-grandmother's father? So it'd be my great-grandfather. And my family does all kinds of genealogy. And so I was able to pull up a picture of this man who's my great-great-grandfather. And that's the person that was in the tunnel with me. It took 25 years to figure that out. And staring at him, and he has an incredible story about his life. But I never knew him on this life. My great-grandmother died 2 months before I was born. And so I never met him. But he was the man in the tunnel. And it's incredible to me because of some of the experiences I had where there were relatives from multiple generations that were there. So our family is still involved in our life after they pass. They don't leave us. And it took, 25 years to figure out who this person was. But it's just incredible to me to know that he's still, our family are still in our lives after they leave us. So I'm glad that I was able to finally figure out who he was. It's filled in a lot of blanks. And as I read more and more about his story, I think, wow, this is incredible that he was there with me. And I was lucky during my NDEs that I did have a lot of family that had passed that were there. My grandmother, my aunt, my great-grandfather, multiple people that had passed that were very important in my life were there with me as I left my body. And it was so comforting to have them again, because I really did miss them. And I can't imagine if I had just been in the hospital sick for that long. I was in the hospital for 3 months. But if I had been in my body the entire time without these experiences, I don't think I would have made it. I'm pretty sure I had a 4% chance of living with everything that was happening. My liver shut down and they were going to do a liver transplant. And I told the doctor when he came in and told me about it, I said, no, I'm going to be okay. I've been told that I'm going to be okay and I don't need a transplant. And he's like, oh, girl's cuckoo.
Yeah.
We'll just discuss this later. I was like, no, I really don't need a transplant. And the diagnosis I had was pretty severe. Your liver just basically shuts down. And it's something that you have to have a transplant for. My liver's fine. I have never, ever had any problems with it. The diagnosis is no longer there. To me, that's divine blessings, because I shouldn't have gone that way. But at the point after the third surgery, I developed a fever of 107.5, and my nurses and doctors were packing me in ice, literally in ice, and they were trying to get the fever down. And suddenly I popped out of my body, and I was in front of this building. It had pillars on the front, 2 pillars, and a really, really tall door. The roof was flat, and it looked very ancient. Like if you look at buildings in ancient Greece, that's what it kind of reminded me of. And I could feel this energy behind me. It felt like male energy. And as I looked around, there were just stone or dirt streets. And I wanted to be in this building. And as soon as I thought, I want to be in this building, boom, I was inside. I didn't use the front door. I was just in the front entry. And I was like, wow, that's really, really cool what I can do. And there were people in there. They were sitting in chairs. There were bookcases on the walls, like shelves with books. And everyone was just reading. And suddenly I was in this room that was round with gorgeous, shiny wood, just really like architecturally gorgeous, with books, thousands and thousands of books and scrolls that were tied with thin strings. And this person was there with me, this soul. And I started reading the books, and I love reading. Like, it's one of my favorite things. And here I am surrounded by probably every book in the entire world. And they were just beautiful leather-bound books. And I was like, leave me here forever. This is so cool. And this soul would open up the scrolls and show me what was in them. And they were like ancient letters and symbols. And I could understand them. And it didn't seem weird to me at the time, because I understood all the knowledge in this room. And we don't have that knowledge here, but it felt completely natural at that moment. And then I was told, you won't remember what's in this room. And then I was back at the entrance to the building. And I looked to my right, and there was a podium. And I'm thinking all these thoughts in my head, like, I need to go to that podium. And I started just, like, when I thought that, I started gliding. I wasn't walking. And I remember thinking, I can glide. Oh my gosh, I'm kind of magical. And I get to the podium, and it starts moving to the left, and there's stairs. And I think to myself, I need to go down these stairs. And I wasn't scared what was down there. I don't like basements generally, but I was like, let's go check it out. And down the stairs, it was stone walls, like stone, rock and brick. And there was water, like waterfalls, pools of water, ponds, rivers. It was magical. And there was no indoor plumbing that I could see, but there were a lot of lights at the top, light coming in from the windows, tons of windows, but there was no electricity. But it was very lightly, like just tons of light in there, very well lit. And I saw this pool of water in front of me, and I couldn't see how far down the water was. And one thing about me, I love water, but I am terrified of drowning, and I will not put my face underwater. And if there's water that's really deep, I'm not going to go in it without like a tube or something, because I have this fear of drowning. But I immediately got into the water, and I couldn't see the bottom of it. but I felt very healed in this water. I just sat there and I kind of put my arms up on the edge of the lip of it, and this man sat next to me, this soul, and didn't talk or anything, just kind of let me see what was happening and feel the water. And then I was told that this was healing water, that the entire area that I was in was full of healing water, that the energy would heal these people in there. And there was a mother with her 2 children splashing in the water of the waterfall. And there were other people, and they were just soaking in this water, and just, there was so much joy in the room. There was no anxiety or anger or sadness, but just pure. It was like being the most purest love ever. And so I sat in the water and I could feel it like healing my soul. And I splashed the water back and forth with my hands. And then I noticed that I wasn't getting wet. Like, my hair was down to my waist at that time, and it wasn't getting wet. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so weird. I won't have to dry my hair after. But all these thoughts are like shooting through my head, but I'm also feeling this profound peace and love. And I never wanted to leave. I wanted to stay there forever. And eventually I did go back to my body. But over the next, couple of days, I could pop in and out, and I would go back to that water, and I would just sit in there, and it would just truly calm my entire soul. When I was in my body, I was in severe pain. My stomach was left open because it had shredded, the skin had shredded, and they couldn't close it during surgery. And so I had this big, huge 8-inch gap. I couldn't sit up on my own. My tailbone was still incredibly broken. It shattered when I had fallen down the stairs. And they couldn't do anything about it because there were so many other more critical moments to take care of. So I'm getting bed sores from laying down in the same position. I mean, my body's just failing me. But when I'm out of my body, I am home, and I'm so healthy. Like, I felt so alive and so happy. And I thought, I just want to stay here forever. I don't ever want to go back to that shell of the body. And so it became this mission in a way to stay there and never go back. And, I'm married, I have this family, and it didn't matter to me. I did not want to go back, and I would have given anything to stay there. And I didn't worry about what would happen to those that I left behind, because selfishly, I just wanted the pain to end, and I wanted to be in this cocoon of love. And I knew they'd be okay. No matter what, they would be okay. And so it just became this mission to stay out of my body as much as possible if I could. And so I would pop out pretty often when the pain became severe. My dad had taken FMLA. He worked for the government, and he would stay in my room. And I had family and friends coming by constantly. I was never alone. But I'd watch him, and if he was not watching me, I'd pop out. And it was almost like this game, like, is he watching? Nope. Okay, we're out. And my family would notice stuff. My husband told me probably about a year or 2 ago that we were just in random conversation, and he said that he would be there with me, and suddenly I would go completely still. My eyes would just be glassy. They weren't blinking, and he could tell I was not in my body. And suddenly I would just like that, and I would pop. It's like I was back in my body. And I would be very confused where I was and very upset that I was back. So my family knew what was going on. And I think in a way, maybe that was comforting, but it also scared him to death. My mom was terrified because she was getting calls from a doctor on a daily basis saying, get here right away. She needs another surgery. I ended up having 13 surgeries, trying to get all the infection and the abscesses out and just all kinds of problems. So it came to the point that she was praying that I would pass away because she saw what I was going through, and she couldn't handle seeing her child in that amount of pain. And also hearing all the things I was saying about the other side, she knew that I would be okay if I was there. When I was in the shock trauma, at one point I did leave my body, and I found myself in this rectangle room. It had a very tall ceiling, and there was a man and a woman. They were kind of older, but they looked really healthy. They looked physically older, but they looked young, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And they told me they were angels that were ministering to the patients in the hospital. And I was able to go with them to quite a few patients' rooms. And by this point in the hospitalization, the nurses would make little comments about some of my neighbors. So I knew some of the situations of my neighbors. My family had met their families. And so I kind of knew some of the things that they were struggling with. But going with these angels to the different rooms gave me a different perspective. They would put their hands on the shoulders of the family members, and you could see the light kind of start at the base of the angel and just kind of move down their arm into this person's body, like just kind of light them with love. To me, it was just pure love energy. And they told me that God was the one that made the decision whether the patient lived or passed on. And if we saw him in this door that was connected to that room, that we would know that patient was going to pass on. And at one point I did see him, and I will never forget the energy. It was seeing his face. There was a glass, like a window on the top of the door, and I could see him from the other side. And it was just lit in this brilliant light. He had this iridescent white hair. It was about, just this long, and a beard and a mustache, very well trimmed, and these piercing, brilliant blue eyes. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, I know you. I knew him from before this earth. And I felt his love so profoundly and so strong. And I just thought, that's God. And it just immediately, I knew it was him. And he could have come in any form. And I know that other people described him differently that have had NDEs, but I got the understanding that he came the way I needed to see him, but I would have known his energy in any form. He could have came, as a little child or an older man. I would have known him because it was his entire essence and energy. And seeing him there, oh my gosh, the love. He just emanated such love. And I was so grateful to be in the room with him again after this separation of this life that I'd been separated from him. And we went into the room of the patient that I knew wasn't going to pass, that it was going to pass away, wasn't going to survive. And the angels put their hands on the shoulders of the family, the mother and the father and the child. It was a teenager. There was the patient was a boy, probably in his late teens. He'd been in a car accident. And as they put their hands there, the love just started flowing. And I don't know if the family felt that and understood what it was, but the energy was so bright and so vibrant that I feel like they had to know that, like, feel that peace somehow. But that son, actually, he did end up passing away. And so their goal was to bathe that family in love and support and comfort, because they lost their child, and the pain that they were going to go through was so immense. And so they were trying to offer the love that they could until the family was able to return home to be with their son again once they passed on from this life. And that was a profound experience for me, because at this point I really did think I was going to die and that it was going to happen soon. And so I knew when I did pass on, there were going to be angels and family members to welcome me back home. And that made it even more of a goal to get there. But I also felt comforted to know that we were not alone, that my family would be blessed and comforted as well. My grandmother, she'd passed away about a year before I'd been hospitalized. And I would tell my family, I was just with grandma. She told me I need to eat and I'll be okay. And here I am hooked up to every life support machine possible. And they're like, oh, goodness, that's not the case. But I actually did end up getting down to about 79 pounds. And once I was finally released from the hospital, my doctor would say, feed her 2 to 3 milkshakes a day, take her to every all-you-can-eat buffet. She needs to gain weight to get healthy again. And so I think that was just her simple way of saying, you're going to be okay. And this is how you need to do it. And so there were little things like that I would say to my family. And so they understood what was happening, and maybe it gave them comfort, but it was also a very, very traumatizing time for them. My aunt, Alice, she'd passed away probably about 2 years before this happened. And one day she showed up in my hospital room, her spirit, and she said, do you want to go to my house? And I was like, yeah, let's do this. And my aunt and uncle lived across the street from my grandparents, and her house, I can still see it now. It was like total 1970s when she passed. She had these like orange countertops that had black speckles in them, and they were so bright orange and orange shag carpet and dark panels of wood in the house. And my uncle still lived there at this point. And we popped into the living room and everything was the same. The TV's going in the background and my uncle's there. And she said, he's going to fall in the hallway and he's going to pass away. And so she shows me this scene where he does just that. He trips and falls and he can't get up. And he's probably, I don't know, maybe in his 80s at this point, and maybe 70s. He was older. And I can feel his terror that he can't get up. He's alone and he knows he's going to die because he's not able to get up and help himself. And so once I got back into my hospital room after this happened, I'm trying to tell my family, you need to go check on him, please. And I have the ventilator. I can't talk. I can't write. I have this little message board that has pictures, like little squares with like emoji faces, basically. Happy, sad, angry. And how do you say, go check on Uncle Harry? He's dead in the hallway. There's not a thing for that. So it took about 3 days before I could even write coherently on a piece of paper to go check on him. And so they sent my grandpa, who lived across the street, to check on him. And he came up to the hospital afterwards because they could tell that I was very upset about this from my behavior. And he said, he's okay. I went and checked on him and he's fine. And you don't need to worry anymore. I was like, okay. But why did I see that? It was confusing to me. It was a very, very real thing to see that. And so the entire time I'm in the hospital, I'm waiting to see what happens with him. And he was fine. And about 15 years later, I got a call from my mom that he had passed away. He'd fallen in the hallway in the exact spot that I saw, and he'd passed from his injuries. And for me, that was validating because that just cemented it even more. I've never, ever doubted these experiences, that now my family could see that, what I saw did happen. And it, took 15 years to have that happen. But for me, there's no time on the other side. When you're over there, you're not worried about getting to your next appointment at 2:00 or, that doesn't exist. There's no time. So what seems like a long time to us is probably a very short time for them. And so by me seeing that in the hospital, it didn't seem like the timer was just different, But it was really interesting to know that he had passed away, and also to know that he was not alone when he did, that he was surrounded by family that had already passed on. And when they took him home, he was not alone. And so that gave me comfort to know that he was with my aunt again and that they had this beautiful reunion together. That same grandmother that lived across the street, at one point, I left my body and found myself in the backyard of my grandparents' house. And my grandpa, again, was still alive. And so he lived there at that point. But as I was sitting on their patio, I looked out to the back of the yard and there were these orbs that were above the clothesline. And I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house growing up. They lived a couple blocks from where I lived, and I'd walk over all the time and play with my cousins. And so I see these orbs going over the clothesline, and they're different colors, like silvers and golds and blues, and they're kind of shimmering through these different sizes of orbs. And then I see my grandmother, my great-grandfather, who's her father, and my aunt, the one that had told me my uncle was going to pass. And I can just see their faces, and they're lit, and they're just so healthy. And all three of them had been a little older when they passed, but I knew it was them, but they looked younger and healthier. And it was completely like we were in this snow globe. It was very quiet. I could see the sky and the stars, but there were no barking dogs or anything. And they just kind of floated from the right of the yard to the left, kind of like, almost like that. And then they were gone. And I was back in my body, and I was like, that was kind of cool. I guess they're together. And I never had that orb happen again. And it was kind of cool to know that they were probably doing work together, but they were also watching over me from the other side. And as I got more and more critical, at one point I found myself over this field. The grass was really it was swaying. There's no other way to describe it. It was swaying, and it was like alive, bright, brilliant green grass, and the trees and the blue skies, everything was alive. The colors were just amazing. And down below, I'm kind of high up in the air. I can see these two white tents. And suddenly I'm like kind of gliding down with the guide. He's always with me. And we get to the inside of the tent area, and there's there's 2 white tents. There were nurses and doctors in there, and they were in their white lab coats. And there were all kinds of medical books, huge books, petri dishes. Just you could tell that they were working on understanding what was happening with the patient. And the guide that was with me said, they don't know how to heal you. It's through faith and prayer alone that you will survive. And at that point, my entire family, my friends, everyone was praying that I would survive. I mean, here I am 20 and I'm literally dying, but I have all these prayer groups in multiple states, people just praying that I'll survive. And I truly believe that prayer, all the prayers for me were heard. Because when my doctor would go in for surgery, he'd say to my family, I don't know what we're going to find when we get in there. I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll figure it out. It was just such a complex case that they had me in like the American Medical Journal. It was just I was such a hot mess. So the doctors really did not know what was happening, but I could feel that the angels were there almost like holding their hands as they did these surgeries to help guide them to save my life. And so now when I go into hospitals, I can feel these beautiful guides around, these angels. And I know that the doctors are being guided in a way that they're not there by themselves, that they have help from the other side to help us when we are admitted. At one point, these 2 little kids started showing up at the bottom of my bed. And sometimes they bring an older man with them. And I was off the ventilator at this point, so I could talk. And I said to my mom, there the kids are again. She'd be like, what kids? And she couldn't see anything. It seemed weird to me that she couldn't see them because they were right there. I mean, it was like plain as day. I was describing to her what they looked like. The boy had curly blonde hair and hazel eyes. And the little girl had straight blonde hair and hazel eyes as well. And then there was an older man with them that would show up. And they showed up multiple times. Like it wasn't just a one-time thing. Sometimes the little boy would come by himself. And sometimes he'd bring the girl with. And sometimes the old man would come with them. And every time I say, here they are again. And my mom would say, well, who are they? Who's the man with them? Is it your grandfather? I'm like, yeah, I don't know who he is, but he's with the kids. And after they quit coming, I would joke with my family and we'd be like, who do you think those kids were? Like, they didn't look familiar to me at all. And so it wasn't like it was a long lost relative or, someone that I knew. I didn't know who they were. And we just kind of joked, they're not our kids. But a couple of years later, after I'd healed, we decided to do foster care. And the 3rd child that we had, I got him home after I picked him up from a shelter. And I pulled off his little fleece hat. And there's this boingy curly hair. He's 22 months old, weighs 19 pounds, this tiny little boy. And that was the child in the hospital. And I was like, oh my gosh. And my husband was at work and I called my mom and I was like, I found the kid. He's here. And I didn't go into foster care to adopt. I knew that eventually I would have to adopt, that there's no way after all those experiences I would be able to carry a healthy pregnancy. And so I just decided we would do foster care, my husband and I, as a way to help children until we could adopt down the line from a foreign country. That seemed the easiest option at that point. Mm-hmm. But after about 1.5 years, the goal of this child did change to adoption, and we did adopt him. But again, at the time, I really didn't think he was going to stay. I knew for whatever reason he'd been in that hospital with me, and we were meant to meet in this life. And I still feel with my kids that they are kind of on loan from the other side. And I'm not their only mom. They were born to their first mothers. And that's significant to me that they know that they were loved before and they still are loved. And so I'm a big, to me, open adoption is very important. But I wondered for a couple of years after that who the little girl was. Because I'd seen this boy who was obviously the child from the hospital, and who was this little girl. And a couple of years later, we got a call for a little girl. And that morning I'd had this feeling, you're going to get the call today. And we'd fostered 25 kids throughout. So it wasn't like these are the only 2 kids, and a couple of them were failed adoptions, and we thought they were going to be adoptions that did not happen. And the day I got the call for her, I woke up in the morning and I thought, okay, I'm getting a child today. I know, like I could feel this child's energy. I just knew. And so I started preparing, and about 4:30 that afternoon, I got the call that we'd been chosen as a legal risk home for a baby girl. All I knew was her name and her age, 11 weeks, that's it. And that it was possible legal risk. She would probably go back to her family. And so when I went to pick her up, like this little baby, she's very sickly. she had like patches of orange hair and her eyes were gray, and they looked like they're spinning in her head. She was really sick. And that was the little girl. And as she got healthier and, started growing, her hair came in blonde and her eyes turned to hazel. And I was like, oh my gosh, those are the two kids that were in the hospital with me. And how amazing is it that I was able to experience them and their souls and their energy before they were even born. And a couple months into us fostering this baby, the goal was reunification. Her parents, they spoke to each other, and her mom pulled me aside and said, when I was pregnant with her, I had this experience, and I spoke with like a healer, and she said that I would not be raising her, that I would choose the mother that would raise her, and that's you. And so we had these amazing talks about how we wanted to raise her, how I wanted them to be involved, and how they would play a part in her life. And her parents did relinquish their rights so we could adopt her. And it was really a hard thing because I'm supposed to be having all this joy, but I had seen the sadness from when my son's mother lost her rights, and then seeing my daughter's parents the same. It was really, really a traumatic experience to see their pain. And so I think we discount adoption a lot. We don't see the trauma that comes from it. It's never a fully happy thing. Like, yeah, this is amazing. I have these beautiful children to raise, but there's so much sadness for their birth family. And so I think that needs to be acknowledged more, that they do have this immense love for their children. And even if they can't raise them in this life, they're still a significant part of their history. So now I have these two amazing children from that experience. But back in the hospital, after the children left, I was still really critical. And at one point, I left my body again. I mean, it was just, continual. And the music, I came back and I was trying to explain to my mom and my best friend, I want to hear the music. And at this point, I'm still on the ventilator. So I'm kind of popping around the story, but I couldn't tell them, turn on this music I just heard. But I really, really wanted to hear it. And so finally I get my little sheet with the pictures on it. And somehow they realized that I wanted to hear music. And so my mom turns on the radio. For that Christmas, I got in a boombox because, this is 1999. So I had like a double CD player. It was pretty cool back then. And so they turned on some music, and it was like church hymns. It was a Sunday. And so the local radio station was playing church music. And I was like, oh my gosh, shut that off. That is not it. Not even close to what I felt. Like,
I'm so sorry. I don't know why that cracks me up so bad.
I know.
That is not it. Turn it off.
I was really upset. I was like, this is garbage. Turn it off. And they don't understand what I'm thinking. And eventually I did get it turned off. And I was like, don't ever turn that on again in my mind. It doesn't even come close to this amazing melody that I had heard on the other side. It was like the music over there has these frequencies and energies that we don't have here. And it's just so pleasing and beautiful and calming and healing. Like everything you can imagine is this music. And then here I'm hearing these church hymns, it just wasn't it. And even now when I hear like an organ in a church, I'm like, shut it off, which is bad when your mom plays the organ. But the music was just incredible. And I'm a person that loves all music. I mean, probably not country. It's not my favorite, but I will listen to any music, and I'm always looking for something that's similar to that. A lot of classical music kind of comes close. And so sometimes if I'm really, really stressed, I'll just turn on some soft music and kind of try to get my mindset back into where I was before, to bring me that peace again that I felt. But yeah, the music here, totally different. But at one point, I found myself on what I would consider the entrance to heaven. And I was with my guide as always. And I knew that if I got past this entrance, I didn't have to come back. And I was like, okay, I'm in the race for my life. And on each side of the entrance were these thousands and thousands of souls. They were all dressed in these white cream colored robes. And they were so lit with energy that I couldn't see their faces, but they were different heights. And they were just so close together. There were so many of them packed in there. And I knew that they were past relatives, maybe even some that had not been born yet. They were friends that I knew, and they weren't all from this lifetime. They were different generations, but I knew them from my time on the other side. And it's like they were welcoming me back home. And I knew that I wasn't supposed to go past that entrance, but I was like, I don't even care. This is my chance. I am not coming back. I'm done. I mean, every day the doctors would be like, get up and walk. And, you have this stomach that's cut open and you can't even sit up on your own. And they'd basically paralyzed my left side during surgery. And I had to learn to walk again. My left side would drag when I'd walk and I'd fall constantly. And once I was off the ventilator, I had to learn to talk again. And here I am, I'm given this chance to be done, to leave my body. And I was like, yes, this is it. I am going to do whatever I can to get to the other side. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm just going to tell my guide that I'm going to see my grandma in her garden and then I'll be back after. And once I'm past that point, I'm never coming back. But he doesn't know that. And the funny thing is the way you communicate over there is telepathically. You don't use your voice. The minute you think a thought, it's relayed. And it's just an easier way to communicate. So what I'm thinking in my mind, he can understand completely.
Yes.
But I'm just so focused on, getting to the end of the line.
Try to be sneaky about it.
Yeah. I'm like, I am so sneaky. This is great. I mean, look at me. And he can hear all that. And so then I hear it's not your time and you have to go back. And boom, I'm back in my body. Oh, it was devastating. I knew in my mind that I had blown that one chance. And again, I don't think I was ever meant to not come back. I think that leaving my body was kind of a reprieve from the pain. Mm-hmm. But having that understanding that I wasn't going to stay there and that I would have to stay in this shell of a body was just devastating. And I couldn't tell my family, I don't want to be with you guys anymore. I love you, but I don't want to be here because the pain is too intense. That just wouldn't have been very nice, But it set in some very dark depression that I was going to be stuck in this body. And the funny thing about that is I was still able to leave my body, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to stay out of it. I would have to come back each time. And so at one point I visited my house. My husband was asleep. My cats were at the top of the stairs. And, here I am flying over the valley thinking, whoo, I can fly. And I end up in the top of my house. It was a split level house. And I was kind of above the door watching my cat sleep. And then I heard that voice of my guide say, do you want to check on your husband? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I'm floating down the hall and I see him. I'm kind of in the doorway of our bedroom. And I can see that he's asleep. He's turned on his side and he's got our blanket, our comforter wrapped around him. And he has this stupid baby blanket they call blue blanks. And it's kind of wrapped around his head. And we always made jokes about it. And, there's blue blanks wrapped around his head. And he was just sleeping, completely oblivious to the fact that I was there. And then I heard the voice say, your nurses are coming back. You need to go back into your room. And then I was back in my room. And I was like, that was pretty cool. There is a life for me after this life. Like I have a house, I have a family. Because at that point, I felt like I was going to live in the hospital forever. I had gone in December and I didn't get released until, the very end of February. And so I felt like that was my house. And another funny experience, I had a nurse, his name was Brian, and he was getting me up to go walking. And my mom was in the room with him. And the first goal was to sit me up, which took, a good 10 minutes. You got to move all the life support machines and such, and then get me into a sitting position. But I can't sit by myself because I'll fall backwards. I have no muscle strength. And so he's holding me with both hands like this as he's in front of me. And suddenly instead of seeing him do that, I'm behind him in a hallway. And there are all these windows and they're kind of like oval windows. and with a little tiny window seat on the bottom of each one. And this hallway just stretches forever, and it's lit at the end with light. And I'm watching him, and I can see my mom in the room, and I can see Brian, and everything is 360 degrees. So I can see myself watching him, but I can also see him, what he's doing. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And he takes one hand from my shoulder, so he's got one holding me, and he starts going like this. And he's saying, Heather, Heather, come back, come back. Can you hear me? Heather, come back. I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. I'm just going to stay here. But I can feel the terror that my mom is feeling. And it's profound. And I can feel him thinking, if she dies right now, what do we do? This is going to be awful. And they're both thinking I'm going to die because I'm, obviously my eyes are not blinking. I am not my body. I'm not my heart, like my chest isn't moving up and down as I'm breathing. And so I hear, you need to go back. I was like, fine, I'll go back, but I'm out again as soon as I can. And so I find myself back in my body. And he's like, oh, we lost you there for a minute. And I shake my head, yeah, like, I know. And I was like, oh, you
cried again.
I know. I was like, the minute you're out of this room, I am out again. Because it was kind of like a game. Like I felt like I had this like cool gift of popping in and out that no one else could do. And it was so easy to do. I would just think, get out. And then I was out. But as I started to heal, that stopped completely. So about 3 weeks in, there's, more experiences than that, but those are the gist of it. But I started being stuck in my body, and I was still not what you consider healthy at all. I was in physical therapy 4 times a day, trying to get me to walk. I had gotten down to 79 pounds. My hair was falling out in clumps. I was 20, and I was finding gray hair in my, existing hair. And I was just in so much pain, and it felt like I had been abandoned. Here I am. I'm still in the same amount of pain, and I can't leave my body now. And I felt so alone. And it really was devastating. I had to feel all the pain that was happening at that point. But as the weeks went on, I did start to heal. And eventually I was moved to what's called the transitional care unit of the hospital. It's like a physical therapy unit. And I hated it. I was the youngest by about 60 years. And the walls were this ugly color of blue. And I was in physical therapy all day long. And I was struggling to survive, basically. It was too much for me. And so my mom wrote a note to the doctor finally and said, she's starting to kind of heal. Can we bring her home with us if we keep her in like physical therapy and have a home health care nurse come to the house? And for some reason, my doctor agreed. I'm still shocked. So instead of going home to my husband, I went to my parents' house. And you have to figure at this point, I'm 20, my husband's 22, and it was overwhelming for him. Mm-hmm. We were kids, really. I mean, my kids are 20 and 24, and I can't imagine them going through this. So my husband was working a lot, and he was at the hospital when he could be, but I think in a way he was almost checked out a little bit. It was too much for a young person to handle. So I went to my parents' house, and my brothers were there. I had, younger brothers, and my dad took care of me. He took me to all my physical therapy appointments. And on the days that he couldn't take me, I would have to go to work with my husband or my mom. I had to be watched 24/7. I couldn't do the most simplest tasks by myself, like sit up. But I started healing. And over the next year and a half, I regained all of my strength. I was able to walk and run. My hair grew back in, and I became really healthy. And so in 2002, I decided that I was going to do one final surgery. And backing up a little bit, I was released in February. I was back in March for what they thought were blood clots. And then in July of that year, I had my final, what was supposed to be just like a 3 surgery thing where they took out the colostomy bag and did the J pouch. So basically they hook you up internally and you don't need a bag anymore for your waist. And there's all kinds of problems. My stomach kept opening up. You could stick your hand into my stomach from the hole. It was gross. But after that, I did start to heal. And so in 2002, I decided to go back and do a scar revision surgery. I had a hernia. And I also had staples and stitches that were coming out of my stomach even after this. And so they went back in and they took the scar from, it was like from my ribs down to my pubic bone. and they made it into like a tummy tuck scar, like a C-section scar. And again, I went critical because that's what I do. And I purposely chose an outpatient care center for the surgery because I did not want to stay in the hospital again. I was done. I'd had way too many days in the hospital. So I start going critical. My fevers are high, and we call the on-call doctor, and we said, okay, obviously I need surgery. I can tell there's pockets of infection. I just knew I was getting quite sick. And my mom said, can we call and have the local bishop give you a blessing first? I was like, yeah, that's fine. So he came out with 2 other men. It's them and my mom and my husband in the room, and I'm laying in the bed, and I'm in pretty intense fog of pain. And as they give me this blessing, I suddenly feel my soul flow out of my body again. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm out. Hello to this beautiful place again that I've missed. And I thought, I'm done. I don't have to, whatever goals I was supposed to complete in this life, I've done it, and I can go home again. So in my mind, I'm preparing to die. And I can feel the room filling up with all these countless hundreds of angels and spirits. And I'm just in such peace. And I tell my mom, I'm leaving my body. And she's sitting next to me on the bed, just, crying. And I've got tears rolling down my face because I'm in such peace again. And then I hear this voice say, this is the last time that you'll leave your body. You're going to heal after this. And it was like a kick to the gut. I was like, no, please let me go. At this point, I'm healthy, besides the surgery, but I never missed that. Like, if I was given an experience to leave my body again, I'm going to take it because the love is just so intense. And so hearing that this is my last experience, I was really devastated, but I just thought I'm going to bask in this love a little bit longer. It was probably only about 5 minutes. And slowly, I felt my soul go back into my body. And I just sat there in that peace for a few minutes as everyone was talking. I kind of, blinked them out so I didn't have to hear them. And I was giving thanks for that ability to be out of my body for just a few minutes to feel that love again. I was just in such profound peace and love. So after the men left, I stood up to get ready to go. And I went towards the bathroom to grab my necessities, my toiletries and stuff. And I looked down, and I had on probably some sweatpants, and my stomach was uncovered because it was just painful. There's the stitching and some the bandages and stuff. And I looked down, and suddenly just gallons of infection start gushing out of my stomach, just pouring out. And as the infection leaves my body, I feel like from my head down, the fever leaving, and I start feeling healthy again. And if you've ever had a fever, when you just feel like you're foggy and groggy and you don't feel right, and as it's leaving my body, I'm feeling like I'm healing, and I don't feel sick anymore. I don't feel pain. And I'm thinking, this is a huge amount of infection. And so I called the doctor and I said, I don't need to come in. I think I'm okay. Can we wait a little bit? And he said, well, I know that you know your body well, and I trust that if you need to come in, you will. And I said, I will. My family's here with me. And so I just went and lay down. And from that day forward, I started healing at a significant rate. I've never had to have any surgery since then. My stomach closed up. I mean, years later, kind of funny, I did have some stitches that I pulled out of my stomach. They were just kind of poking out. And so middle of the night, I was like, let's do surgery. But I've been really, really healthy since then. And I've stayed in my body. I was able to raise my kids and have this beautiful life. And I never planned on writing a book about it. I never planned on talking about it in public. I would tell parts of it to friends and family, but never, out loud. A few months after, when I was still checking with my doctor, the main surgeon, I had quite a few surgeons, but the main one, we were just checking to see how I was doing. And I broached the subject with him, and I said, I died, right? And he just his whole body went backwards like he'd been hit. And he looked away like this. And then he started talking about something else completely, wouldn't even acknowledge the subject. And I was like, that's really weird. He has to have known what happened. I mean, there were so many miracles for me to survive. But at that point, it wasn't talked about. And doctors didn't want to acknowledge that maybe their patients weren't fully in their bodies or that they died and came back. It just wasn't something that was talked about back then. But over the years, especially the last few years, I've noticed that it's more spoken of. And whenever I'd have a friend or a family member that was in the hospital in critical condition that would survive, I'd say, what did you see? Did you see anything? And we would talk about whether they did or not. And so I knew that it wasn't just me, but I had gotten every single book on near-death experiences I could when I left the hospital, trying to find someone that had been in that healing water or that had seen some of the stuff that I had seen. I read every book possible. And this is before podcasts. The internet wasn't big back then. It's, 2000. But I never found one that was specific to my experiences, which I now know everyone that has an NDE, it's different. It's almost like it's tailored to their needs and their understandings, and it has their family members a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times. But people talk about it now, and it needs to be talked about, because even especially after my book came out, people would come up to me and say, oh, I had that happen. I died in the hospital and I saw, whatever, and they'll tell me the story. And they said, I've never talked about it with anyone before. And so there's all these stories out there that I think they need to be heard. I know that there are a lot of people that are afraid of dying because I've talked to them. And I've had people say, my mom's getting ready to pass away and she's terrified that she's going to go to hell, that she wasn't a good person. And I'm able to sit with these people and explain to them that that's not how it works, that we are all loved. I wasn't special in my experiences. Every one of us is loved by our Creator. We are all known, and the prayers that we give on our behalf and for others, they're heard. They're not always answered the way we want, but they are heard. And if I would have gotten my answer, the prayers to my answer of being able to leave my body, I wouldn't have been able to experience all these beautiful parts of my life that I needed to have. But at the time, I was very, very angry that I was sent back to this broken body. It was like, why did you do this to me? And now I can say it wasn't done to me, it was done for me. It was what I needed in my life for this moment. And so there are a lot of people out there that have critical health issues. And I always want them to know they're not alone. You feel like you are sometimes when you're so sick, but there are other people that are experiencing it. And so there are support groups out there. There's people that can hear your experience and help you through it. And so I don't want people to feel alone or afraid of death. And so those are my two main things that I came back with, I think, is to help others know that love. And the message really that I got was that we are all loved and that love is the ultimate in this life. It's not, again, about how many big houses you can have, or it's not the material things. You don't take any of that with you when you pass on. You take the moments where you maybe helped a single mom when she needed help, or you took in your neighbor's garbage can when they had back surgery. There's just so many ways we can help and give service in this life. And to me, that's what we are here for. So, yeah.
What a story. Oh my gosh. I wanted to ask so many questions in between, but I was just like, I don't want to break up the story because you're just so good at telling it, even if you bounced around a little bit and picturing it. And so, yes, I have questions for you that I hope I can remember. So going back to the spirit guide, the one that you found out 25 years later is your great-great-grandfather?
So two different people. So the spirit guide that's always on my right shoulder is not my grandfather.
Okay.
It was just the man in the tunnel only.
Okay.
The spirit guide, I call my guide. He's not, from what I understand, he's not a family member, but he's been with me throughout his life.
So it'd be more like angelic, kind of the story of the assigned soul.
Yeah.
I love the spirit guide assigned soul thing. I had an experience when I was younger with like a spirit guide conversation. So when I hear more stories like that, it brings like more validity to how it's, it's almost like they're assigned to us.
Yeah.
And there's some that come in to help for certain areas of our lives. And then one that's like, is our main person that's with us all the time. So I love that they were able to be with you and show you all of these different places. You pointed out that telepathy is the main language there, which is what I was going to ask earlier. When you first saw all of your relatives around you, were you all talking to each other telepathically?
Yeah.
Did your grandma obviously was like, when you eat, and move around, you'll be better. But were there any other messages that you got from relatives, or was it just how happy you all were to see each other and you were all just enveloped in this unconditional love?
So I was actually told that I would forget a lot of my experiences. And I think the reason why is because it was so hard for me to come back to my body. And if I knew everything, then I wouldn't have been able to come back. Like I know when I was at the entrance to heaven that I had been to my grandma's garden, that I knew I needed to get there again, but I couldn't tell you anything about her garden there. So I know a lot more happened than I remember. And it's sad to me, but I also do understand because it has been hard to come back. Even now, if you were to say to me today, okay, you can go back, I'd be like, awesome, let's do this. And that doesn't make sense to people on this earth because, when you have a family to raise and stuff, why would you say something like that? Mm-hmm. But when you're there, you understand it more that everyone here will be okay in a sense. But yeah, everything there was telepathic. I never moved my mouth to talk. Once I thought a thought, it was immediately relayed to whoever I was with, and same with them. It's like a feeling that fills your soul, and with an understanding that doesn't require communication like we have here. And so they would relay these thoughts, and then it just filled me with an understanding. It was really cool. There was just an amazing way to speak. And I think if we had that here, it wouldn't be as like, there's so much divisiveness and hate in this world. Mm-hmm. And if we had a truer understanding of each other's souls, I think a lot of that would fall away.
Yeah, we're pretty low tech down here, according to near-death experiences. When you think of all the technology that we have to use to communicate, and even like there's doctors that have just invented a machine that you can hook yourself up to and play your dreams like a movie the next day. Yeah. And there are people that are excited about that, and I am not. I don't think technology like that should exist. My dreams are for me and my subconscious to work out, and mm-hmm. I love if I'm supposed to remember it, and if there's a message in there, or if somebody's visiting me, and the ones where I just get to experience, and then if I don't remember, then I believe that I'm not meant to remember. Like I am guided. Yeah. And I do have those moments where I'm like, no, I would really like to know what that message was last night, and that's just for me to understand.
Yeah, and I have really intense dreams sometimes. I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I ask for numbers in mine, or I'll just ask for like certain symbols. I'll ask to like talk to certain past loved ones too. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. I don't always hit the mark every time, but I've always had like such deeply encoded dreams since I was a kid. So, and I've been trained to learn to them and learn about my little spidey senses is what I was taught growing up, which I mean is your intuition. So you obviously like had these visions coming back and forth, some that came true like 15 years later, some that would just happen where you would have a knowing about yourself when you were completely healed up. Do you have like strong intuition, clairsenses? Do you have any extra sensory gifts now that you have come back with from the other side?
Yeah, and I've asked other people that have had NDEs, what's the gift you came back with? Because from what I can see, there is always some type of gift. So I know sometimes when things are going to happen before they happen, and it's not like world events, it's like specific to my life. One example, and my guide is always still here. The second baby that I had as a foster baby, we'd had my first, so let's see, no, he was a couple babies in, but anyways, I had my son, and he was still a foster child. And for about 13 months, we just had this foster child that was, my son. And one day I was taking him for a visit with his birth mom, and I had this feeling like, you're getting a newborn baby. You need to go home and prepare for this baby. And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's been like over a year, and I don't think we are. And I was dropping him off downtown to see his mom, and I lived like 45 minutes away, and so I'd usually stay downtown. But the feeling was so intense. I just kept hearing, you're going to get this baby, go home and prepare for him. I was like, okay, I will. I'm not going to tell anyone just in case they think I'm cuckoo. So I went home and I washed all the baby clothes, got, the bottles, the bedding, everything ready in the nursery, and then went to pick him up from downtown, my son. And as I was driving, I got a call from a caseworker saying, we have this newborn baby boy who's in the NICU. Can you take him? And I was like, oh yeah, we're ready. And he ended up staying at the same hospital that I had been in for my surgeries. And he was there for 2 months in NICU. And so every single day I would go to that hospital, but the place that was pure hell for me, to medically train to take this baby home. But my guide was so strong of, you're going to have this baby. And we ended up having him for 20 months before he went back to his family. But I've had so many experiences throughout the years where that happens. I'll hear that voice, and it's never wrong. It can be simple things like, you need to go to the store because you need this specific thing and it will be here. And I'll be like, okay. So get my car and drive to the store, and there that thing is that I need. So it's kind of like my guide knows me and knows what I need and kind of tries to give me what is necessary in my life. But it doesn't mean that it's been an easy life and that he's always like, here's $1 million or whatever. I've had a pretty hard life. I divorced my husband when my kids were 7 and 11 and became a single mom overnight. And that was hard financially, very, very, very hard. But there have been these little miracles throughout the years that have made me know that I am being watched over, and maybe I need these struggles to help me later on in life. And so I just need to grow from them instead of complain and be like, this sucks, But yeah, my God is definitely with me still. And it's beautiful little friendship, like sometimes I'll be like, hey, what's up?
I wish that's something that everybody could take away from stories like this, is not only like, do you have a guide, but they have a guide, and they never really are alone. I think obviously with your experience of knowing where we come from and coming back to earth, like how you said, you have a family to raise, you have all these loved ones. It's just weird for you to be okay with death and okay with going back to heaven. But I think maybe it's the way that heaven's taught to us, is they don't really understand, like, you're visiting earth. You're only here for a short amount of time. Your true state is love, and your true home is this place of, like, yes, embodiment from a visual standpoint. Like you said, God needed to come to you in a way that you would understand. But I still see, like, the heavenly bodies with the robes and stuff. That's what I think mostly when I go there. And the physical vessel doesn't stay because of the density that we're living in right now, but our soul gets to go. So again, not having a near-death experience, I'm the same as you. Like, I know that I have a lot to do on earth, but if the day that it happens where I'm not here anymore, I am so at peace with going back home. I am not one of those people that live in regret of the things that I've done or the way that I've treated people. I've really, like, forgiven myself for not knowing what I was doing at the time. And I've worked through a tremendous amount of that. And I'll probably still continue to on my path. But even without having the experiences that you've had, I've had my own experiences with the divine where I'm like, I just can't wait to go home. I'm so excited to be here. And all the experiences I have are like really big bonuses for me. But to know a group of people feels like that without it being like a mental illness or severe suicide ideation or anything like that. Like,
I'm not suicidal.
I'm not going to take my own self out ever by any means, but I really am, like, excited to go back home the day that I get called home.
Yeah. And I've always joked, like, because I talk about how I want to go back home, but I would never end my life before. Because I mean, obviously, if I survived all that, they'd be like, nope, you're still here. So I tried. Yeah. But I think with my daughter, she's always like, or not always, but she'll be like, why do you want to leave? Like, why would you want to leave us? And I'm like, that's not what it is. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't had these experiences what the kind of love is on the other side. Like, I love my kids and I love my family. And I really am blessed with an amazing group of people around me. My tribe is just amazing, but they don't have that pull. So I feel like I've got 1 foot here and 1 foot there. And when I take my last breath and I open that door and go to the other side, I'll be back home, and I'll be waiting for my family and friends here until they pass, and we'll be reunited. And there's no fear. And I think a lot of people are worried about, I'm going to be judged. I'm a sinner. Like someone yesterday said, I'm a sinner. I'm afraid to die. And I said, everyone sins. Like, we're here to learn. That's not what it's about. We judge ourselves more so than anyone else ever judges us. We're our worst cynic, but there's just profound there.
I think sin just sounds so final with the way that people teach it in religion.
Yeah.
a wonderful etymology research about all of the very like deep, dark wounds in any form of religion. And sin just happens to mean like miss the mark. So you still have a chance. And the sin is judgment immediately on yourself. And you don't need to judge yourself. You don't have to say this was a good experience, this was a bad experience. You just look as the experience in a neutral format to see what you could have done differently, how you can move forward, and then you move forward. But
Absolutely.
the way that it's taught today is it's so final. Oh my gosh, I've sinned. I have a black stain on me. I'm not going to be able to walk through the pearly gates. And I'm like, it just means miss the mark. Like, do some research. You will liberate yourself from any religious sin or hierarchy that you think you have to go through. This is an experience, and just look at it and see what you can learn from it.
Exactly.
I think that's what God would want if you went up to him and be like, okay, this is what I did. This is why I did it. This is why I'm not going to do it again. And this is what I did afterwards. And they're like, that makes more sense to me than just being completely damned for something that you didn't understand that you did in the first place.
Absolutely. And I never, ever felt any judgment on the other side. And I was 20, so it's not like I had all this time to like, go out and do all kinds of bad stuff. But no one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. I never, ever once felt like I was judged, like I was loved less. If anything, the love was so intense that it was like, welcome home. There was no anger and hate. And so it makes me really sad when people on this earth think that they're less than, or that they're not going to get to the highest kingdom or whatever, because they maybe, think that they've sinned or they've not led a good life. I think there's a lot of emphasis put on this earth of guilt, and it doesn't need to be that way. Yeah, we're loved profusely on the other side.
I agree with you. So you do have a group of people. Not only have you spoken about your story now, you've written an inspiring book that has made other people come forward about their stories. Yeah. But can you tell us about the organization that you work with to bring these stories together and also share them with the world?
Yeah, it's an incredible organization. So it's called IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies. And it is an international group. It's the entire world. And they have a gathering every year in a different state in the United States. It's around Labor Day, right around that time. It's about a 5-day conference. This year it was in Chicago. And it's just incredible. I think there's probably, I want to say 700 or 800 people that were signed up this year for it. Some were online, but a lot of them were in person. And you spend 5 days with these people that some of them are experiencers that have had NDEs, some haven't. I was surprised the first year how many were there just because they are interested in this type of story. But you spend 5 days immersed with beautiful souls. You hear speakers all day long. There's different groups. And I've developed some incredible friendships with people across the United States that I met at this conference. So it's just an incredible organization. There's so much love and support. And there are chapters throughout the United States and probably the entire world, different chapters. And so the Utah chapter, I'm on the board of directors for that. Right after my NDE, once I healed, I went to a couple of meetings, and it's the one in Utah has been going since like 1990, I believe. But I got busy with life and forgot about it. And then a couple of years ago, I had a friend that spoke at one of the meetings, and so I went back to listen. And before I knew it, I was on the board of directors, and oh my gosh, the people are just amazing. So once a month, we have a speaker that comes and speaks about their NDE, either in person or online in Salt Lake. And I have met the most incredible people this way, and souls, and hearing their experiences. I feel like I've got this group of people around me that understand me more. I don't feel so alone. A lot of times I felt almost like I was watching from the outside of a big group, and I didn't feel like I fit in, because I've had these experiences that they separate you kind of from other people. But going to these groups, I feel like there are people that understand where I'm coming from, and they can kind of validate what I've been through, and they provide that love again. So it's a great organization. So whatever state you're in, there's probably a chapter there that you can go to. And I think all the meetings are free, as far as I know. But yeah, it's an incredible organization.
This has been a tremendous interview. I know that I looked very stoic most of the time just listening, but there were times where I had to hold back tears on some of the things that you were saying. It's just such a powerful story, not only in your physical body, all of the pain that you went through. I would feel the same way in your shoes if I was going through all of that pain in the hospital. I would be begging to go to the other side too. The fact that the kids were shown to you and your husband and your house was shown to you and almost like your future, it seems like a cosmic incentive. Like, hey, you know, you're not screwed. You're still 20 at the time, which is, I keep picturing you right now going through it, and I have to go all the way back into the 90s where none of this information and the internet is a thing. So even finding the information, like what a journey you've really been on.
It was hard back then because you didn't have the internet. And so I always wonder, it's kind of one of those shoulda, coulda, woulda things. Mm-hmm. If I had the internet, could I have maybe healed myself better than what happened? Like maybe I could have stopped it. And every time I think that, I think, no, you were supposed to have this experience. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could have had more support to know what I was going through. But yeah, there was a reason for it.
Definitely. And you're 25 years later, you're here telling the story. Mm-hmm. You've written a wonderful book I cannot wait to purchase and read. And obviously you're inspiring more to come forward with their stories, which I think is a huge healing aspect that we all need.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some incredible stories out there, and it's been really fun to hear them. And the doctor that admitted me to the ER, when we were talking about how different it is now, there are a lot of doctors and nurses that do understand it. There have been studies where they will ask the patients, what did you see when you left your body? And they're able to give the patient support. And it would have been nice to have that back then because I did feel alone. And so I love that these healthcare providers are validating the experiences and wanting to know more about it. And it's changing how they care for their patients. They're bringing in more of a spiritual gift to the patient to help them understand what they're going through. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, it is a gift, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that it's moved from, it was just in your mind and the medication to, maybe there's a spiritual component that we've been missing all along. Yeah. And I'm glad that it's more widely accepted and hopefully will continue to be that way.
Yeah. It's almost like people are waking up now and they're craving this information.
Mm-hmm. I definitely feel that too. Not in just NDE, but a lot of things. I think a lot of people are realizing the spiritual has been left out of a lot of things in their lives and even taught to us with it needs to be more expanded is what I would say. I don't want to say anyone's wrong. I would just say all paths lead back home.
Yeah.
Some just wind a little more, take a little longer. And as you found, even in the energetic world, we're all on our own path, but we're not alone.
Yeah. And I just think there needs to be more love and acceptance. There doesn't need to be such divisiveness with, like, for example, political parties and religions. And we all came from the same place. We're all going back to the same place. And imagine how different the world would be if we led with love instead of hate.
I'm so glad you came on the show today to share your story and all of the things that you brought back with you. Where can we find your book if we'd like to purchase it?
So it's on Amazon. It's on all the different websites, Barnes & Noble. You can get it online anywhere. And then I have a website because, you have to do a website. So have my brother put one together for me. It's heathervandermeyden.com. But I think most people are buying from Amazon for the most part.
Wonderful.
And I never thought I was going to write a book. I'm so shocked it's out there. It's almost embarrassing in a way, like, because I didn't want to ever talk about it. And every time someone would say, write a book, I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about that. But I am very proud that it's out there. It healed me. And if that's all it does, that's incredible. But the people that have reached out, that it, touched their heart, that's why I did it. And so it's not about the money. It's about helping others.
And the healing process for you, I mean.
Oh, huge.
I think you needed that more than anything, is to really get it out there. And I'm a big fan of transmutation and taking the things that you learn and just passing it on to the next person. So getting it out in the world and then letting people find it, I think that is just a true treasure that you've given everybody.
And it really did heal me. I can walk into a hospital now. I mean, I've done a lot of therapy, but the beeping noises don't make me crazy. Like the smell of alcohol swabs, doesn't make me want to throw up. So it really, the whole entire experience healed me. And my poor mom, like it's really, really hard for her to hear about it. She read the book and she comes to all of my speaking engagements, but boy, she had some trauma from this. And I wish dearly that she could have had some of the experiences I had, so she could see the beautiful parts of it. So
as a mom, that really choked me up. Like when you started talking about your mom, I was like, oh, I couldn't.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Like I could not imagine like being that strong, but still having to watch my daughter go through that. That would just, yeah, your mom's a strong woman. And I love that she supports the book and she supports you. And
yeah, I have an incredible family. And my daughter's the age I was when I went to the hospital. I'm about the age that my mom was as well. And I think, would I have the strength to be able to do what my parents did? It was a lot. And I was always surrounded by
everything too. Like you had 8 inches open all the time. It's not like the room smells like roses.
Well, at one point, after they had hooked up everything, I kept getting a hole in my stomach. And so they put 15 feet of gauze into my stomach to hold, my insides in, I guess. And they said, you can come back to the hospital to take it out, or you can do it at home. And I was like, oh, my sister-in-law's a vet tech. She can do it. So when she was pulling it out, like the smell was just so awful. Like the hell I put my family through. Like they're all running out of the room like, oh, she's rotten.
Yes.
So there were some funny experiences. Yeah.
It was interesting too. And your stubbornness to even get into the hospital is something I wanted to say in the beginning.
Yeah, my denial.
So stubborn. Yes, the denial is on a level I've never seen for someone so critical.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, I have a tube down my throat now and I'm tied to my bed, but like in your mind, you're like, I'm just gonna pop out of here.
Yeah.
But you have a great way of looking at it. You have a great way of healing. And for anybody that wants to buy the book, I will be happy to put the links below. Heather, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you. This has been so fun. It was so great to meet you.
So great to meet you too. Let's stay in contact. I want to hear about all of your adventures moving on.
Oh, for sure.
All right, my friends, we'll see you on the next episode.